ॐ स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः. So today is our great master class, Sri Ramakrishna the great master. So in our previous Sunday class, we were discussing uh, a conversation from the gospel where we, among many things, we also discussed some aspects of Sri Ramakrishna's renunciation. So renunciation, you all know, was always a part of his life. In fact, when Holy Mother Sri Sharda Devi was asked, what is the uniqueness about Sri Ramakrishna? How is he unique as compared to the previous incarnations and previous prophets and great people? So someone pointed out that perhaps we may consider Sri Ramakrishna's harmony of all paths or harmony of all religions, the preaching and practice of this particular aspect to be unique because all the previous incarnations they propounded a particular religion, but they did not practice the already existing religions or religious faiths. So in that way he was unique, but that was not his uniqueness according to Holy Mother Sri Sharda Devi. She said he did not practice all these different religions just to show that they all lead to the same goal. His idea was that his whole effort, all the efforts that he did, his entire attention was on realizing the divine through different paths. And she said, just as a glutton is not satisfied if his hunger, if he is given one particular type of food, he wants to eat more and more things. So he is not satisfied by eating one item of food. He prefers to taste everything that is available and he is fond of that. That's why he is known as a glutton. So Holy Mother said, similarly, Sri Ramakrishna's hunger could not be satisfied by one particular path. As soon as he realized the divine through a particular path, he would feel restless to enjoy the divine, uh, enjoy the divine play through different paths. He came as Krishna, he came as Rama, he came as the Divine Mother, the Divine Mother's aspect of Hinduism, and also other religions. So, whatever he could, whatever he knew, and the different teachers that came to him, they taught him different paths, and he wanted to realize God through all these different paths. He was not satisfied. As a after effect, or maybe as a result, this idea that each Jotomat Totopat or different paths lead to the same uh, divine, that was a result of his sadhana, no doubt. But that was not his intention. His intention was to uh, enjoy God in different ways. So he was a spiritual glutton. That is what Holy Mother said. But at the same time, she said that is not his uniqueness. He says, till now, no matter which incarnation you consider, she says nobody has seen such natural and spontaneous renunciation before. He says all incarnations, they were Tyagis, they had renounced the world. In fact, many of them did not even marry. Jesus and Buddha, of course, was married, but he had to renounce the world. Whereas Sri Ramakrishna's renunciation was of a different category. It was embedded into his personality. That is what Swami Sardananji is trying to explain to us. What is the sequence of the master's renunciation? He showed many other things. He showed harmony of paths, harmony of religions, and many other things he taught through his life. But Swami Sardanji says in this chapter that in order to make firm his knowledge of God, that knowledge that God dwells in all beings, Sri Ramakrishna performed a lot of sadhanas and he saw one common thread among all these different paths. Whether you practice religion as the Christians do, as any other path within Hinduism, you will find there is a common factor. And he knew that that common factor was renunciation. So, as Sri Krishna is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, very clearly, Sri Krishna says, detached, that is, non attachment was the central theme of Bhagavad Gita. Non attachment, in fact, means renunciation of things that you consider to be dear to you, nor hate things that you consider which you don't like. So, any strong likes and dislikes have to be treated uh, with the same attitude. That is what Sthita Prajna is in the Gita. So that means you look upon this world, as we discussed in the Gospel class, as in the Gita class yesterday, that you look upon everything, whatever comes to you, good or bad, or what some things which you like, they come, and we are elated, we are very happy, we are full of joy. But at the same time, maybe after some time, some things that we don't like we encounter, and then we try to avoid that, or at least have a distaste for that, or maybe have some kind of resentment. We don't want those things. We don't want to uh, encounter things that we don't like. So, likes and dislikes form part of our entire journey of life. Every time we are struggling to get what we like or what we think is good for us, and we run after that. And always at the same time, we are careful to avoid things that we don't like, if we can avoid it. Many times we can't avoid, those things just come to us, and then we perhaps, when it is inevitable, we think that we have to endure them. Even if we don't like, we have to endure them. That way, we are passively accepting the dislikes, not out of any necessity or any willingness, but out of compulsion. So every time we get a thing, that thing or a person or a situation which we don't like, the maximum we can do is we just endure it till we get the thing that we like. So that is what detachment means in the Bhagavad Gita. But renunciation, as defined, or vairagya as it is defined in Vedanta, means something else. Even before you may have passed through the stage where you give up likes and dislikes, take things as they come. If things that you like come to you unasked, you just don't get elated or show excessive joy, because you know something which you don't like will soon follow. So you have to tolerate both. So you just maintain a detached attitude towards that. That is also renunciation, or that is some kind of renunciation where you renounce the likes and also the dislikes and just remain unattached to both. So that is what Sri Krishna explains in the Sthita Prajna Lakshan. But Sri Ramakrishna took renunciation to a higher level, as it is defined. Vairagya means uh, in Buddhism and in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, you will find the basis of both these sutras is vairagya. Abhyasa is one thing, practice. Practice without vairagya, abhyasa and vairagya. Though Sri Krishna tells Arjuna the only way to control the mind is through abhyasa and vairagya. So abhyasa is constant practice. But at the same time, this detachment has to be practiced. Because without that, you will not be attached to uh, the object of worship that you have considered as your Ishta. So, in the Master's life, in Sri Ramakrishna's life, Swami Sardanji says, renunciation was taken to a still higher level. And as I said, There are two types of renunciation. Mostly for householders, it is mental renunciation. They cannot physically renounce many things. Most of us cannot renounce many things physically. So scriptures permit that if mentally we renounce, that is enough. But Sri Ramakrishna said renouncing mentally is not enough. He was as he was keen to experience God through different paths, he found that the common path, the common thing in each of these religions or each of these paths is renunciation. Whether you follow the Buddhist path or Jesus Christ path, nobody says that you can have both God and mammon at the same time. Mammon in the sense the world. So you can't have the best of both worlds. So you have to give one to get the other. So, but Sri Ramakrishna believed that yes, for people who cannot renounce physically, mental renunciation is to begin with is good. So, but in Sri Ramakrishna's case, he knew that this renunciation should not be at the conscious level. We renounce a thing, we decide, okay, I don't want to, I'll give up this gross object. I will not eat this or I'll not do this. So that is giving up some of the gross objects one by one. That is what is prescribed in the scriptures. Since you cannot give up everything, give up the things to which are not absolutely necessary. Reduce your wants. So or focus on your needs rather than the greed. So there is, as Mahatma Gandhi used to say, that in this world there is enough if for a man's need, but there is not enough for his greed. So greed is unlimited. You should not be satisfied. So some kind of renunciation can be practiced by giving up things that you really don't need. That is very easy to do. But Sri Ramakrishna went deeper than that. That is why Holy Mother said he is the greatest feature, uniqueness of Sri Ramakrishna is his natural and spontaneous renunciation. So he was not satisfied if he gave up the things, the gross things, which he thought are harmful for spiritual life, which would make him worldly. He wanted to root out that idea from the subconscious mind because most of these ideas, the ideas of renunciation or ideas of attachment or ideas of greed, they are all in the mind. It is the mind that desires, and it is the same mind that becomes desireless. So it is the mind is the window that connects us to the world. So, but at the same time, there are two aspects of the mind which we have discussed. One is a conscious aspect, which is known as manas, but there are other aspects of the mind which are known as subconscious, which reside in our mind at some deeper level of our mind as samskaras. We do not know they exist, but they exist in a very, very subtle form. So to root them out, the renunciation has to be total and complete. That means, in medical terminology, Swami Sarvasthananda, who for some time practiced medicine, he knew, he analyzed how ideas or thoughts in the mind become actions. It is through the nervous system. We can act only through the brain or the nervous system. Thoughts may be there, but unless they are conveyed through the nerves, to the sense organs, through the body, we will not act. So we call it a nervous association of ideas. We may have great ideas, but those ideas have to be part of our nervous system so that we can practice it. And Sri Ramakrishna, he said, it's not enough for me, at least for him. Renunciation was so natural, Tyaga was so natural, Vairagya was so natural that it became part of his subconscious system also. It's not just the consciously he would give up. Consciously, many of us give up, I'll not do this. But mentally, that hankering still remains. In fact, Sri Krishna tells this in the Bhagavad Gita that though the sense organs refrain from attaching themselves to the objects of the senses, still the subtle mind is after them. So it is, Sri Krishna says, those people are hypocritical because they, on the surface, it is obvious that they have given up, but at the same time, that hankering has not been given up. So Sri Krishna wanted to root out whatever little subconscious desire was there, or whatever little subconscious attachment to anything of the world was there. He wanted to root it out. He did not want this nervous association of ideas to ever prop its head, so that he will he had to convince not only his mind, the manas or the superficial mind, but his unconscious mind through the nervous system, and tell that you, even your nervous system will react if, even if unconsciously you do something wrong. So all the basic human instincts which are detrimental to spiritual life, he wiped them off from his subconscious by practicing a lot of sadhana which you cannot imagine. So he forced his body and the mind. Can keep a few chairs,
Yeah.
keep them, Gaurav.
Yeah, yeah. But there are places.
Some more chairs to keep. So he would not believe that he is practicing a strict life of self-discipline in his life. That was enough. Normally, that is what we mean by renunciation, vairagya, or tyaga. That we decide that we will not be, not allow our desires, whichever or whatever desire comes, whatever we like, we just run after it. We try to self-discipline ourselves by controlling, externally at least, controlling them from influencing us. But he believed that it's not enough if these superficial thoughts, superficial desires are rooted out. He believed that they are somehow lying hidden in the unconscious or the subconscious mind. So he would not rest content till he replaced all those samskaras with positive thoughts of renunciation. So his renunciation was complete. So he he practiced a lot of sadhanas, and he did it in a sequence. How progressively Sri Ramakrishna gave up many things that, and he demonstrated that there are many things which we like, but discipline doesn't mean that, self-discipline doesn't mean that you avoid it. You may avoid it, but somewhere in the corner of the mind and the unconscious mind, they are lurking. So till you root out those samskaras or impressions or past memories which give rise to such desire, he would not uh, rest content. So he said he would not believe, even if he is convinced or if others thought that he has absolute control over his senses, his instincts, basic human instincts, which prevented him from having the vision of the Divine Mother. He was not content. He said, till I root out those impressions and replace them with new ideas. So you have these two things in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, Vairagya followed by Abhyasa. Abhyasa comes first. But unfortunately, Abhyasa, no matter how much you practice, at the same time, you have to root out. So they have to be replaced. So Patanjali says the only way yoga, the yoga philosophy or Patanjali's Yoga Sutras say, it can be done by Pratipaksha Bhavana. So you know some thought is harmful. A thought of fear, for example, is harmful. So you try to replace it by a thought of fearlessness. So that is how the idea of God or idea of repetition of the name of God, with properly understanding the meaning or the purpose why you are repeating that name. It's not just a repetition of the name. Whenever we repeat it with the idea that each one of those repetitions are creating a are helping us to create a new habit to counter all the past habits. In fact, Swami Vivekananda in his Karma Yoga says that a man, a human being, a human personality is a resultant of his past habits. So if he is evil, then it is because he practiced those evil habits. By just practicing it once, he doesn't become an evil person. It is repeated practice of evil habits. A smoker will not be a smoker, chain smoker, if he doesn't smoke every day. If he regularly smokes, then only it becomes a deep-rooted habit. So also with good habits. So the only way to counter bad habits, according to Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, to constantly have the opposite. Pratipaksha means the opposite thought, and convince the mind till you are rooted out the old habits, not only in the mind but also in the nervous system. So that nervous association of different ideas that we see make us do things which we really don't want to do. Most of the things that we do is a nervous reaction because they have become part of our nervous system. And even if the mind consciously does not want to do it, for example, a habitual smoker, his habit has been so deep rooted that it has become a part of his nervous system. So he cannot, his nervous system will keep on telling him that you need to smoke now, you need to smoke now. It's till you root out, till you replace that, that smoking is harmful for health, smoking is harmful for not once, twice, but it will take the same time it took to form this bad habit. So you have to counter it. So Sri Ramakrishna believed, and that is according to the Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, that all the past impressions that he had have to be countered one by abhyasa, by repeating the name of the Divine Mother or whatever uh, holy sadhana that he did. But at the same time, have that counter idea to that to counter it, we have to have the opposite idea. So sometimes that bordered on eccentricity. People thought he was mad. In fact, for a long time, even Sri Ramakrishna's mother, because he was not ordinary in that sense. He used to do this, they didn't realize that he was not satisfied with a simple renunciation. He wanted to make sure that his self control was totally complete. It was complete, so he wanted to make sure that he rooted out all the past samskaras. That's why they say spiritual life is a very difficult process because we are what we are today. mm, Buddha has this very simple rule: as you think, so you become. So we are what we are because of our thoughts. Thought over a long period. All these thoughts have not, they're not thought a few days ago. For several lives, we are just carrying on that residue of all the previous samskaras. Those samskaras result in memories, good or bad. So they lie in the mind, and when you recollect them, they are known as smriti. So the smritis then they will induce you to action. A smriti of a deep-rooted habit, though you have controlled it, it lies so deep in our consciousness that when you least expect, these smritis come out. And then till you replace it with a opposite thought. So Sri Ramakrishna's way of rooting out that, he took his spiritual life very seriously. Just as a scientist, if he also a scientist or anybody who is pursuing a specialty, apparently he's an eccentric because he cannot be normal. If you want the normal people don't become geniuses. Most of the geniuses appear to be eccentric because they are so focused on the subject of their research, of their investigation, that they have no time for anything else. So apparently they don't behave like other people who will have a little of everything. So when Sri Ramakrishna took up spiritual life, he took it as seriously as anybody, a person who is running after wealth would take his profession. He would take it very seriously, otherwise he will not make money. He has to be mad after money. He has to think the moment he gets up, he will start thinking. Suppose he is investing in stocks. His discussion, his conversations, everything are secondary. He may give up all the pleasures of life just to earn money. So some kind of intense devotion and dissatisfaction till he has perfected what he thinks is his goal of life. That is what explains Sri Ramakrishna's eccentricity. Because other priests, he was also a priest, other priests did puja in a particular way because they had so many factors in mind. Hriday, for example, his own nephew, he was always looking for rich devotees who would come there, thinking that he would earn some money, he would save some money, build a house. So many ideas were there. It was a job for Hriday. Though he loved his uncle and he served him very well, knowing that was part of his duty, no doubt. He was very sincere about that. But at the same time, he would get upset when his uncle would disregard rich people, the Lakshmi Narayan Marwadi who came, and in those days he offered 10,000 rupees. He was so impressed by Sri Ramakrishna that he said that how will you, I mean, you are not earning anything, even the salary was not bothered. Though they gave a salary, he never signed, he could not sign anything. So he was totally uh, he was refusing to accept any kind of remuneration. She said, I'm not doing this as a job. He was doing puja of the Divine Mother. Whereas Hriday and others, they were very keen. And when Sri Krishna took a stick and started beating him, you have come to tempt me. He wanted to just help Sri Krishna by giving him 10,000 rupees, which was a huge amount in those days, so that you don't have to worry. You can go on practicing your devotions. I am just depositing. Then Sri Krishna first, because he was a great devotee, he said, you ask Holy Mother. Holy Mother was, of course, full of renunciation. She said, if I accept it, it is as good as the master accepting the money. So I'll be using it for his purpose. So if he has refused, then I can't refuse. And Hriday was perplexed. Said, they thought he was eccentric, refusing such a big gift, such a big offer of money. So he was very much upset when he saw Sri Krishna going to the Ganges. Normally, people would think it is an eccentric behavior on the part of Sri Krishna because they could not understand, including his nephew Hriday Mukherjee. So, but Hriday saw that one day his uncle, how he practiced at different stages, how he gradually practiced all these ideas of renunciation, which may be there in the scriptures, which scriptures say we even recite it. But for Sri Krishna, it was not enough if he just heard about it and just practiced it in a gross way. He wanted to make sure that it is part of his nervous system. So he appeared to be eccentric several times because he used to take taka and mati. That used to take taka means money, some coins, and he wanted to convince his mind that, you see, these are equally useless for me, and throw away both the coin and the clod of earth, saying that taka is mati and mati is taka. So Hriday was surprised. He said, this my uncle has gone crazy. What is he doing? Because people, he had seen many Vairagis or Swami, so many Swami sadhus coming there, and so many renunciates coming, staying in Dakshineshwar and going to Puri. He had seen them, but nobody practiced this type of sadhana. Literally telling his mind again and again that they have absolutely, they are the same. It is, I mean, it was a psychological, uh, I mean, a sadhana, a psychological practice which he underwent as prescribed by Patanjali, that you have to do it again and again. You have to convince that Pratipaksha Bhavana means the opposite thought. So he did it literally. And he believed that this way you can control your mind quickly. And he believed that unless he did that, he would not be perfect in his renunciation. So now Swami Sardanand is trying to give a counter argument. He said, are these practices which Sri Krishna did, they are so difficult to practice. Should we practice it? So that's why he says, what is the use of doing all these things? Mentally we have renounced, why should we bother to do all these actions? In reply, we say, very well, thus far, how many people have been able to concentrate their minds on God, completely renouncing sense objects? By adopting your so called simple means of renouncing mentally without performing external disciplines? That is the question, which Sardhanji says. Though it is possible that we can renounce mentally, but Sri Krishna came to demonstrate that unless these ideas of renunciation, abhyasa, vairagya, they are there. The scriptures describe it, every scripture, the Upanishads, the Bible, you take any scripture. Jesus, in fact, was more strict than the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita because he refused to accept anyone as a disciple. One of the disciples was very rich, came to him along with the other 11 fishermen that he had. Most of them were fishermen, but there was a rich person who was impressed by Jesus and wanted to uh, join or become his disciple. Then he said, yes, but there is one condition. You have to sell all your property, whatever riches you have, distribute among the poor, and then follow me. If you're okay, then you can come. And then, of course, that person did not come. Then he tells his disciple, that is when he makes this remark. It's not possible to realize God and mammon at the same time. You cannot have both, best of both worlds. Either you give up spirituality and go after the world, or you practice spirituality and give up the world. So Jesus was uncompromising, even Buddha was uncompromising. But our scriptures, especially the Hindu scriptures, they know that it's then a large majority of the people cannot practice spirituality, or at least cannot hope to practice spirituality. So that is why a graded renunciation is given. But Sri Krishna says, if I do 16 parts, you at least should do one part of what I did. That would be enough for you. In fact, several times he says, because just to encourage his disciples, he would not insist as perhaps Jesus would do, though he would say what total renunciation is necessary, but for householders and for many people, renouncing mentally is the first step. But I can't, as an incarnate, as a uh, sadhaka of the highest order, incarnation, he has to demonstrate that it is uh, humanly possible to attain to the highest renunciation. And as he said, if I have practiced 16 parts, at least the least you can do is do 1/16th of what I do. That should be enough, at least at your level. But he was of the opinion that when the mind thinks one thing and moves in that direction, and the body and the nervous system moves in another direction, then there cannot be any spiritual progress. So, but a person who is hankering, who is intellectually convinced and or not convinced, intellectually satisfied, thinking that he has done his daily devotions, he has recited this stotra, that stotra, because religion, it's easy to practice ritualistic religion because that does not make many demands. Of course, Sri Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, even that is not going to go waste. But people are satisfied because it allows them to have a little of both the worlds. But Sri Krishna said, if I do that, then people will not even do 1/16th of what I do. So he says he was firmly of the belief, or it was a conviction with him that the mind cannot move in one direction and the body and the nervous system cannot move in another direction. So he had to do exactly what he used to speak. In Bengali, it is known as Manmukh Ek Kara. So whatever the thought, in fact, he practiced it. There are a lot of small incidents which these are great incidents, but there are small incidents which M. Mahendranath Gupta has recorded in not in the gospel, but there is another book where his reminiscences are recorded. So he said, he observed one thing about Sri Ramakrishna, that whenever a thought came to him, it is known as in Sanskrit, it is known as sankalpa. Sankalpa means it can begin as a kalpana or as an imagination, but when it becomes a sankalpa, it is a kind of uh, oath that you take, or it becomes a definite thought which we cannot rest till you have done it. So how he practiced all the thoughts, every thought that came to his mind resulted in a corresponding action. One example he gives, he will suddenly say, now I will go and do pranams to the Divine Mother. He was sitting in his room and he would immediately get up. If he shows the least amount of delay, then his mind and his actions will not tally with each other. So he would just get up and start walking. And in the meantime, if somebody comes and tries to ask him some question, M observed all these things. He said he would just walk very fast. His walk was unidirectional. He will not loiter around and okay, anyway, I'm going there. Let me do this. No. The sankalpa was that I should go. So till that that action is over, he will not undertake another action. If somebody stopped him on the way, he'd just ignore him. Though it appeared to be eccentric, but he would go, finish his devotions, whatever he had, sankalpa he had made in his mind. Once that is over, then he was open to other things. When he came back, then perhaps the person was surprised because he felt that it was too rude to ignore him and just go. But it's not a question of behavior or etiquette. He did not care if it hurts somebody, because once the sankalpa came, he had trained his mind or his nervous system that it had to act, there is no other way. If he said, I will not touch a coin, he could not touch it even unconsciously. This we have seen. Swami Vivekananda tried to test. He said, how is it possible that even unconsciously a coin touching him, his nervous system, his whole body used to react? And this was observed by none other than Dr. Mahendralal Sarkar, who was surprised to see so many wonderful things. These are, in fact, miracles, not creating some object out of thin air. These are low-grade miracles. But the real miracle, as Swami Sardanji says, is to think of something and immediately that action is carried out. So there's no disconnection between the thought and the action. So he firmly believed, Swami Sardanji says, the mind thinks one thing and the body and the nervous system cannot move in any direction. It has to move. Then there is coherence between thought. So that is why Swami Vivekananda says, he was a person who was so much wedded to truth that if he thinks something, he has to act upon it. Thought, word, whatever he spoke was based on what he thought. Most of us are forced to be hypocritical. We know somebody, we don't like somebody, we can just keep quiet, but we don't need to praise. That is what he could never do. That is why Hriday used to many times get upset because some rich people, sometimes even Keshav Chandra Sen, was so well known, which sometimes upset his disciples also. He would just say certain things. What if obviously Holy Mother is to say that we should not say an unpleasant truth, though it is a truth. So, but at least you can keep quiet. But Sri Ramakrishna was not like that. Very often he would be very kind, compassionate, but he would not tolerate any kind of hypocrisy, whoever that person may be. He would not bother about the consequences. Hriday used to get upset. Said if you talk such things about people, then because he had certain ulterior motives. But Sri Ramakrishna had no such motive. He firmly believed that whatever thoughts come to the mind, I should train my personality in such a way that they should immediately find expression in concrete action, if it is a good thought, of course, so that the thought, word, and deed become one. But Chardanji says a person who is used to hypocritical ways, body and mind goes in one direction, the body and the nervous system moves in another direction, they could not appreciate his actions. And that is why they called him eccentric. But Swami Vivekananda was very keenly observed all these things. Not that he accepted him so easily, he tested him. Said, let me just see whether his nervous system really reacts. He says he cannot touch a coin, but let me see. And in fact, he tested that. And then he felt ashamed that he tested his own guru. But at the same time, Sri Ramakrishna appreciated that this is what a scientific approach to religion should be. Spiritual truths have to be experimented. The thoughts should not be frozen in the mind, they should be converted. This thought should find expression through actions. Otherwise, it's better not to think. So there are so many wonderful thoughts that we entertain, keep, but Sri Ramakrishna could not do that. That is why he discarded learning. According to Swami Vivekananda, he said he did not bother to stuff his mind with other people's thoughts. He says we feel so small before him because our minds were filled with other people's thoughts, which we learnt in the university. And we thought we were learned men, but here was a person who learnt all his lessons from the University of Nature. And that made him absolutely authentic because his teacher, his university was the highest, the University of God itself, where everything has to be tested and experimented, and the thoughts have to correspond to the action. Whereas in academic knowledge, we can be hypocritical. We may talk of Advaita, but not even practice it is academic knowledge. It of course refreshes the intellect. We get a lot of joy that we have understood so many wonderful things. But Sri Ramakrishna did not want that kind of knowledge. That's why there is a wrong idea that he refused to go to school. He refused to go to school because he felt, according to him, the best way to gain knowledge is through experience. And in that university, he was perfect. That is what Swami Vivekananda said. His education was of the highest order because whatever he thought, if it did not correspond to a corresponding, it did not correspond to some action as a result, then that he did not want, he had no use for such knowledge. Said, what shall I do? That's why when they asked, you never read these books, all the books that he used to quote, sometimes he used to quote from Upanishads. He said, but I have heard them. Whatever he heard, he made use of them. He took it seriously with so much of sincerity that he was not keen to just gather knowledge which he is not going to use. All the thoughts that he gathered in the course of his life, right from childhood, is to hear so many wonderful things. His goal was clear. He listened to holy men who came from authentic traditions, and once he heard them, he remembered them, his memory, because there was nothing to cloud his memory. Whatever he heard once, he could remember. And whatever he remembered, he practiced. So his teaching was so simple, so scientific, so original that Swami Vivekananda says that our going to the university, we felt so inferior before him because ours was somebody's knowledge, some books which were written by somebody who others' thoughts we have borrowed, we have passed some exams, and we think we are educated. But coming to the source of knowledge, we came to a person who had connection with the source of knowledge, the Divine Mother, the whole uh, Prakriti. Nature herself taught what needs to be taught to Sri Ramakrishna because of his devotion to Shakti or the Divine Mother. So he he took everything seriously. If Patanjali says these impressions have to be countered by impressions, he would do it first rather than think about it and go on doing. That's why he once told Swami Turiyananji, which we find in his later life. Turiyananji was not in a hurry to. He took the Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita, just two books, when he was doing tapasya. And he said, sometimes I used to think about a verse for not only a few days, but several days, for more than a week, sometimes just doing shravana, listening or reading, here, then thinking about its uh, meaning deeply, and after having done that, trying to allow it to sink it in the consciousness, so they become part of the nervous system, of the whole body and the nervous system. Till it percolates to that level, it doesn't become useful knowledge. It is knowledge, no doubt. It is academic knowledge, intellectual knowledge, but till it becomes part and parcel of the personality. So he was not in a hurry like other graduates to pass this, pass that. So Swami Vivekananda learned in the beginning. If you, the first question that Mahendranath Gupta asked when he mm, met that servant maid outside Sri Ramakrishna's room was that, does he read many books? Because till then he had an idea, according to the Western concept, that reading books alone can make a person learned. Then she tells something remarkable, though she had never gone to school. She said everything is on his mouth. She knew in his mouth. He doesn't have to read. She didn't know how, but this knowledge, she knew that this person has, is spontaneously, he has absorbed whatever little he has heard and taken it so seriously that he would follow every thought of the Upanishad, of the Gita, and go to its logical consequence. Not just take up a thought for the novelty of it and then read something else, then go on reading. He would never do that. If he, if somebody told him, even as a child, if you see, if somebody told him, he used to listen with full attention, and all the different spiritual knowledge that he gathered from the different minstrels. In those days, this oral tradition was very strong. So, in the oral tradition, the advantage is that you that's the best way of actually acquiring knowledge. That is what Indian knowledge systems always believe. Because reading and writing, they are good, but if you hear something, it creates a greater impact. There's scientific evidence to that effect. So that is always this idea of shravana, to listen. That's why when Sri Ramakrishna was asked, you never read books, you never, how do you have so much knowledge? He said, how much have I heard? So hearing, there was enough material that when he could hear, he had the opportunity to hear, because Dakshineshwar was built by Rani Rasmani for that. The very purpose for her was to encourage all the holy people of India when they were on a pilgrimage to East India, to Puri and other places. Naturally, she provided all the facilities, pay, place to stay, prasad to eat, because people could not spend money. Most of these were sannyasins or just wandering monks. So she did a great service by spending all her wealth to provide those facilities. So Dakshineshwar became a center of attraction, and thousands of people passed through. And they used to invariably pass through Kamarpukur also, which where Sri Ramakrishna grew up, and later on in Dakshineshwar. The number of holy men he has met, because he used to quote, he would never say this knowledge. He said, my Guru Totapuri used to say, somebody used to say, he didn't uh, hesitate to acknowledge from whom he had heard. But unlike other people, after hearing it, he made it his own by making it part of his nervous system. So he believed, according to him, after listening to all these holy people who passed through, he was convinced, as Jesus said, you can't have God and mammon at the same time. He says, just as light and darkness can never appear together, yoga and bhoga cannot coexist. So he says, he used to say, no one has ever discovered an easy path that allows one to serve simultaneously God and the world of lust and gold. So the scriptures repeatedly teach us, this is what Shardanji says, whatever one should renounce or accept. He didn't insist. In fact, there were many householder disciples, some great householder disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. He didn't ask anyone to give up everything. But whatever you accept or whatever you renounce, you have to do it with body, mind, and speech equally. It's not just with the mind, it's not just enough, but that corresponding thing, it should be there in the speech, what you speak, and also in the body. Then only he said, he believed that one would be worthy of God realization. That is why the sages say that a person cannot realize the Atman through excessive emotion without knowledge accompanied by renunciation. This is, he's quoting from the scriptures. By method of reasoning, reasoning is necessary because it will avoid superstitions. The only role reason has to play up to a certain point in spiritual practice, reasoning is important because it prevents superstition. It's Swami Vivekananda said it is better not to believe than believe blindly. So you reason it if the reason is convinced, because there is a method, is a scientific method to spirituality also. None of our scriptures, especially Patanjali's Yoga, which is a practical manual of spirituality, they never insist on any knowledge which is not experimentally verified in the laboratory of life. That is exactly what Sri Ramakrishna did. He was not willing, satisfied by theoretical knowledge. He would have rather have less knowledge, but practice whatever he heard. And once he is convinced that it is true, then nobody could convince him to give it up. So similarly, he found that by means of reasoning, he also had his own reasoning. Every human being has this faculty of reasoning. So Vedanta says the mind proceeds slowly. It's a gradual path. You cannot give up the gross all of a sudden. So, but the human mind has to progress. As Swami Vivekananda said, civilization is the progressive reading of spirit or into matter. So, spirit or thought, or when it becomes gross, it becomes matter. So, the more matter, the human mind has to start with matter, but slowly from the gross to the subtle, from the subtle to the causal plane. As I said, the Karana Sharira, which is the storehouse of our unconscious or subconscious impressions, was the target of not only Sri Ramakrishna, but it should be the target of all sadhakas. Because at the subtle level, it's easier to control the manas or the mind. But till Sri Ramakrishna was not satisfied till he went deeper into the Karana Sharira, because he knew all the thoughts, they bubble up from that unconscious mind, which is full of our past habits and samskaras. They are stored in a very subtle way, even subtle than the subtle body. That is why it is known as Karana Sharira. They are it's known as the causal body. In our class on Vedanta, we discuss this so often that this the threefold classification. It doesn't become subtle, even for the thought to become subtle before it becomes an action expressed by the body. It starts, the bubble starts coming up. You might have seen how a bubble grows. When it is in the depth of a pond, the bubble is very small. As it goes up, you will find it increasing in volume until it comes to the surface and bursts. So our thoughts that we experience, they are the effects of something which was subtle, which was hidden in the subconscious mind. They became subtle. Some people through meditation can realize that some subtle changes, some disturbing thoughts are appearing. But for that, we need to study our own mind. Patanjali says first you need to calm down the mind to watch your mind. We watch everything external. That's why they say from the gross to the subtle. First, we watch the gross things. That's why Swami Vivekananda used to say a person who can cook nicely or do any external action perfectly, he obviously can meditate also nicely, because we always proceed from, you can't be uh, you cannot do things, actions haphazardly in the gross external world and then expect your mind to meditate. It doesn't happen. It proceeds gradually. That's why Sri Ramakrishna first tried to practice all that he thought, or all the impressions that he wanted to push into the causal mind. He practiced it externally. He started from the body, started from the actions. If I have a thought that I should go and uh, bow down to the Divine Mother, then I should not be doing something else just because somebody tries to stop me on the way. See, this was observed by Mahendranath Gupta. He said once he decides something or says something, once his thoughts, sankalpa comes to his lips, and he used, that's why once he had promised one of his doctors, there are several incidents which will come to that. He had promised somebody who told him that I have some medicine for his stomach pain. So he said, I will come and collect it from your home. He had promised it, and at late at night, around 10 o'clock, he tells Hriday that, oh, I had promised that doctor that I will come and collect medicines. And obviously at 10 o'clock, perhaps by the time they reach his door, everything would have been closed. So Hriday says, we can go tomorrow. He said, no, I have in fact promised him. So he gets up and walks all the way, seeing the door locked, lights off. He opens the gate, goes inside, and tells the doctor that I have come. And even if he doesn't respond, he just says, I have come. So he completed that action. So he was incapable, Swami Sardanji says, by reasoning, his mind started with the gross, and whatever gross promises or gross actions he did, they were intimately connected to the subtle, the mind. His mind was functioning that way, and then to the causal plane. Then he says, Sardanji says, there is no other way to reach the supreme goal. So that supreme goal may change from person to person. The goal may be different, but the methodology doesn't change. So thoughts correspond to words, words correspond to actions. That is the way to success in any field. In any field, even in the secular field, if you want success, this scientific method has to be followed. Now we will come to the mode of worship. We know everybody does puja. Sri Ramakrishna also did puja. In what way it was different from others' ritualistic worship? So after Ram Kumar's death, till then, if you see, he was not interested in doing this ritualistic worship. He was more than happy to just pray in his own way uh, to the Divine Mother. But unfortunately, his elder brother Ramkumar died. So naturally, Rani Rasmani and Mathurnath, they were so keen that he should do puja. He's the best person to do puja. Then, with certain conditions, he accepted. He said, see, you people, I've put so much of jewelry and other things on the mother. She is the uh, owner of this universe. The whole universe belongs to her. And you think by your costly jewelry, you are giving her something. So I can't take care of those jewels. If Hriday or any other employee takes the responsibility of those jewels, because if I focus on those jewels and other things, I can't worship my mother as mother. For me, it's valueless. For her and for the Divine Mother, and also for me, they have absolutely no value. So then they agreed to that condition. He said, I will not take care of the jewels because then my mind will be always thinking of how to, if some robber will come and take away all these things. That is how places of worship were looted by people. People are not going to, so many times they say, Somnath, there was so much of gold there. People used to donate. Naturally, that will be attracting thieves. So Swami Vivekananda said, why did these people come and loot this Somnath temple? Hundreds of times it was invaded, hundreds of times we poured gold. So naturally, and then we, like Mathur Babu, he was angry. He said, some ornaments were stolen from Radhakanta's temple. There was Vishnu temple also inside the campus. So he said, what can, he was very much upset because it was stolen. So he remarked, and that came to Sri Ramakrishna's ears. He said, what kind of God he is? He could not even protect, Krishna could not even protect his jewels. That was his idea. That is the silly kind of idea that he entertained. And then Sri Ramakrishna scolded him, though he was not a pujari at that time. He was just helping his elder brother. So he said, what kind of intelligence you have? These ornaments are valuable to you. But to the Lord of the universe, he owns the whole universe, including all the jewels that are there. So why should he bother about these things? It may be very important to you. So Sri Ramakrishna insisted that I will perform worship according to with devotion the way he did. I will continue to worship describing the way he worshipped. These were all, of course, Shardananji, Swami Shardanji, when he wrote his biography, they had all come much later. This sadhaka period, fortunately, Hridaya and a few people were still alive who had seen Sri Ramakrishna doing all these things. So they were also shocked because they were afraid that he's breaking all the rules, he's worshipping the Divine Mother in his own way. What will happen? What will the authorities? Still, Mathur Babu was there. He had warned all the administrators that do not interfere with his worship because he was convinced that his puja or he was a uh, uh, his puja was of a supernatural nature. It was not just a ordinary pujari doing for some money or some transactional benefit. So he told him whatever he does, whichever way he worships the Divine Mother, nobody should interfere. So that injunction was there even after the passing away of Mathur Babu. They were all afraid to take any action, though they tried covertly to complain against him, saying that he's doing puja like this, doing puja. Sometimes he used to uh, sit for hours together and wait for the mother to eat prasad. There was no routine way of doing like anybody would do in those days. So all the different incidents which are there, which we'll discuss in the next class, uh, show very clearly that he systematically demolished the idea that rituals are necessary to attain the highest realization. He didn't criticize them, he didn't mind others doing it. He knew, for want of better knowledge, these things are going to be part of human society. People want materiality. If they want uh, because they want good food, they will offer good food because they know ultimately the prasad will come to them. It's not that out of devotion. Krishna says, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam. God is satisfied with just one leaf, a little water, but we don't follow because ultimately there are some hidden agendas behind all our pujas and all these rituals. So that will be there. And he did not, he said, I have not come to break anything. He was happy if people did puja the way they did. But he exposed the hypocrisy behind that. Whatever hypocrisy was there, he said, you can't force me to do. Just because you are doing with a particular agenda in mind, I'll not follow these rituals. I'll do it the way it pleases me. I am free to approach my God the way I feel, which would increase my devotion. So that kind of attitude, you will find that kind of attitude that was constantly there in his typical method of puja. That is why the master's mode, this chapter, the master's mode of worship, Swami Shardananji has elaborately discussed, because that was his intention, that people very often see the external thing and are impressed by the external puja and all rituals and grandeur and all the decoration and all those things. But what is the real intent behind the puja and what should be the intent and how Sri Ramakrishna worshipped the Divine Mother? All those incidents will be discussed sequentially. You will find how he used to quote, sometimes sing, spontaneously sing. There was no fixed routine. He used to sometimes sing Ram Prasad songs, the same kind of devotion, the same kind of yearning, the same kind of burning faith. And his idea was that uh, devotion and the intention behind the worship is more important than the actual act of worship. Of course, he would do all the things, he would spend a lot of time decorating. Himself used to prepare garlands, he used to go and pluck the flowers himself, not just do it because he has been paid to do it. So there was so much of worship, meditation, devotional singing, and people were those who were sensitive, those who understood, those who were sensitive to spirituality, they would appreciate it. A few of them. Mathur Babu appreciated because he had a few visions. He was also confused because he was also very ritualistic. But some of the visions that he had by the touch of Sri Ramakrishna or by his grace, that convinced him that this is not an ordinary worshipper of God. He's not an ordinary pujari. So he was the one who understood. Rani Rasmani, of course, she passed away earlier, but Mathur Babu's injunctions, at least till Sri Ramakrishna did the puja of Bhavatarini, that is the Divine Mother in Dakshineshwar, nobody would, though they tried from behind to uh, complain against him to the administration and his son-in-law, Mathur Babu's son-in-law was not a very devoted person. And he was the one who drove Hriday out of Dakshineshwar, prohibited him from coming. So, but still, they never, uh, they knew Sri Ramakrishna because not only because Mathur had this injunction, they would allow him to worship the way he did. And you will find some wonderful insight of Swami Sardananji where he says why he did it. There was a meaning to, though what we say think is an eccentricity, there was a meaning to his eccentricity. What looks as eccentricity to people superficially had so much of meaning behind everything that he did as puja. So we'll discuss about it in the next class. Any questions for that? So we'll break up for Aarti and there's some time before Aarti. Any questions?
Oh, 1 second. Somebody,
Yes.
someone raised his hand.
Just read out a little loudly
He's just raised his hand. He hasn't written anything.
or let them type.
Rajiv Samant has put some question.
Tell.
I'll
No, he's just raised his hand.
Yeah, but
He's got to type still.
in
Yeah.
Zoom.
Yeah.
he WhatsApp me because maybe I don't know.
No.
Oh, he's WhatsApp. Here he's put his hand up, but he has not. You can ask him to.
No, but how can I ask you? I'm not seeing him. You read the question.
Yeah, there are two questions. First question is, does japa help to settle down very disturbed mind? Because during japa, one will be thinking something else rather work or domestic affairs.
Okay.
Shall I repeat? I'll repeat.
Yeah, I got that. I'll repeat the question. And then second.
Second one is, how can one get confirmation that japa has helped to concentrate better? Is there any quantified or qualified method to appreciate the benefit
Yeah,
achieved by doing japa?
So one question has been asked uh, whether what is the method of doing, because many times when people sit for repeating the holy name or doing japa or any kind of meditation, so many thoughts come. The whole purpose of our discussing the subconscious mind and the uh, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, where we say the only way to counter undesirable thoughts is counter thoughts. It is known as Pratipaksha Bhavana, means cultivating exactly the opposite feeling. So when we sit for meditation, it is very obvious that from the Karana Sharira, the subconscious mind, over which we have no control, mind you. We have no control over that because it is a result of, you may say, thoughts that we have thought not only in this life but several lives. So the combined impressions, sum total of all that those impressions, determines what our Karana Sharira will be like. Karana Sharira means causal body. So the cause is far deeper. So when it comes to the subtle plane, we realize when we sit for meditation, what happens is one of those impressions come to the subtle plane, the plane of the mind and buddhi, and then it further rises. And when it comes as thought, then we realize that we have been repeating something which is part of our sadhana, which is to counter these thoughts, and we are not able to do it because the the thoughts that are rising from the subconscious are too many to ignore. So the only way, it may take time, is to just go on countering it with positive thoughts. So the only way, though, there's no shortcut in this. That is the problem, because no matter, Buddhists do it in a different way. They don't do japa. They don't do have a system of countering it. Though Patanjali says Pratipaksha Bhavana is more effective. Buddhists follow another method. They just watch. They make the mind tired. They allow the causal body to just uh, allow the thoughts to rise. Sometimes good thoughts will come, sometimes bad thoughts will come, and they will remain detached. It is known as vipassana, seeing, seeing intently. Seeing means just being aware, not taking sides, not being unnecessarily upset when bad thoughts come, not being elated when good thoughts come, just observing them. So that is another way of dealing with it, which is a slower but more easier for, especially for those who don't believe in the power of the holy name and those who don't believe in God. For them, it can be very useful because they have nothing to believe in. So they just want, all they are told to do is just be aware. Be aware of your actions, be aware of your thought. And as you witness all the thoughts that are lying in the causal, as causal memories or as impressions, they will slowly rise to the top, and you just watch them coming and vanishing, going one after another. So that is a slow but a method that is prescribed in some of the meditations. So that is one way to deal with it. But those who have the benefit of having a uh, sanctified mantra which has come down in a very authentic tradition, in a Guru Parampara. It is not that any name can do the job. It has to come in a particular tradition, a time tested tradition, proven tradition, where this has been found effective in many sadhakas. So that is that when it comes in a tradition, we are sure that this will be effective sooner or later. But it may not be equally effective because depending on how much of backlog you have to clear, then these thoughts will come. But definitely, as we engage in spiritual practices, sometimes we will be surprised that these thoughts are increasing. Then you feel that, am I doing something wrong? Because earlier, at least, I was not troubled with these thoughts. That is also because when you are serious, when you take spiritual life seriously, you are trying to poke the subconscious mind, which was totally not disturbing you till then because you are so busy with your career, our earning wealth, that we had no time for our subconscious mind. It was lying there. It is just the example, ideal example is that of an attic in a house. Attic may be full of dirt and garbage, but if you close the door, the house looks clean. Any visitor, if he comes, you push all the dirty things in the attic, close the door, and then people think the whole house is so clean. But if you open the attic, then naturally that garbage will come out. So one need not be afraid. So sooner or later we have to open the attic and clear those things also. So that is exactly what happens when we meditate. When we start spiritual life seriously, in fact, in the beginning, opposite happens. Said we were much better before starting this sadhana. That is because you have opened the attic. You have, at least sooner or later you have to open. You can't keep these things indefinitely. You may store it for a few years, but then one day you will feel, okay, let me open it, clear the whole attic, that storeroom, and once it is clear, then you are happy because the things have been thrown, disposed, whatever you wanted, you kept, other things you have disposed. So, this meditation or serious spiritual practice is like opening the attic. We go to the causal uh, level of our consciousness. Then we find that there is a huge backlog. So, there is no other shortcut. You have to persist. They will come, then again you have to do it. Repeat the mantra or at least watch them. If one is tired of repeating the mantra, you can just watch it, allow it to come and go. That is the Buddhist way. It is known as mindfulness meditation, or it can also be known as awareness meditation. So, that is another technique. You just don't associate with that. You know these thoughts will come. So, allow them to come and don't allow them to disturb you as if they are strangers. They are there, they will come and then they will slowly leave. So that is one way. And what is the second part of the question?
Second part
Oh,
is
what easy,
how
easy,
to
yeah, easy way is obviously the repetition of a mantra, because the mantra tradition uh, has a scientific concept associated with it, especially the Bij mantra, which is part of the Tantra philosophy of India, which is, of course, derived from the Upanishads, that is worshipping God the Mother, God as the Mother as Shakti. So they use a Bij mantra which is known as the Shakti that causes destruction, the Shakti that causes creation. Everything is a result of power or Shakti. That is their philosophy. Tantra means the divine power or Prakriti manifests herself as a good power or as a bad power. It can manifest in any way. It one power leads to creation, another power leads to destruction. And the bija, according to that tantra tradition, is can has that capacity to destroy the thought at its root before it becomes subtle, before it becomes a thought. So it goes into the subconscious mind, and every repetition of the bija along with your mantra, Ishtadevata, and meditation, it has the capacity to positive, that is the main function of bija, to destroy the thoughts that are lying in the subconscious mind. But as I said, whichever method we follow, the only way is to counter these thoughts by positive thoughts. And maybe for some people they have to do for a long time. Some people, if they have less backlog or they have less uh, things to dispose or destroy, then it may take a shorter time. But that is the only way. There is no shortcut. As Swami Sardanji says, Sri Ramakrishna showed the world that there is no shortcut. One has to gradually proceed from the gross to the subtle. That is why we don't believe in saying the mantra loudly. When you say it loudly, it is in the gross plane. We have already covered one step by going in a subtle plane and repeating the